All right, welcome back to QuickBooks Chapter 8, where we're going to take a look at items and inventory. Okay, so if you're following along with me in the book, go ahead and open up your book, and it asks you that we're going to be using Inventory 21 file. Okay, so first thing that we're going to talk about is QuickBooks items. Now, in this case, QuickBooks items is pretty straightforward, okay? Items are used 100% in the sales process. Now, we got to take a look a few times what items can do, right? In chapter 2, we got to see how we, use items on our list to sell a product or service. Chapter 3, we got to use items to set up sales tax. And then, of course, chapter 3, we also got to take a look at how to use items as a means to write off bad debt. In this case, right, items are used for, in a sense, to break down a sales process. So there are a total of 10 items on the items list, okay? Right here, you have service, which is straightforward, right? If you provide a service, you would create a service item. If you have inventory parts, okay? If you sell a product, right, in your store. But here it depends. What's the difference between an inventory part and a non-inventory part? Well, they both do the same thing. One of them is in means of you keep a really good track record of it, and the other one, not so much. You don't really care to keep track of it, but you do, or this item you don't sell as often as you do for an inventory part, okay? Then we have inventory assembly, okay? We'll talk about that when you build your products. So again, a great example is a bakery store, right? You got eggs, flour, sugar, and etc., etc., and you combine all of those ingredients to make, your cake or whatever baked goods that you sell at your store. Okay. Then, of course, we also have other charges, which is, right, you could use other charges in means to use for shipping, okay, or for, extra costs, right? And of course, you have, we took a look at subtotal and discount, okay? And of course, we also have group items, which we'll talk about, right? Groups items help you bundle up one or more products or services together as a package, okay? Payments, you can use payments in a sense of using it as towards a payment for a certain product or certain item here. So again, you could use it like as a form of payment towards something. But in this case, we would normally use a service. And then we have sales tax and sales tax group, which we talked about in chapter 3. Okay? So those are the 10 items that we get to take a look at, and we're going to go ahead and build our items right now, okay? Starting with the very first one, let's build our first one, which is our service item, okay? Now, once you build one, everything is going to be more or less very similar or same, okay? So, start off with our QuickBooks, okay? How do we get to our items list? Well, we have two options to get to the item list, okay? You have right here under list, right? You got items list, or you have the whole page right here, items and services. Now, to create a new item, right, you have a few ways that you could do it. So whether you create it using the items list or by going to the inventory center. So yes, we'll talk about the inventory center in the middle of chapter 8. Yes, so that's that there, okay? But let's focus on how to get to the items list. So in this case, I like to go on my home page, right here, items and services. So I've mentioned before, right? It's any detail in regards to your sales process. So if you're selling a product, if you charge shipping on it, if you charge tax on it, this is where you have the breakdown to be able to do so. Right? Now, how do I create a new one? Same thing as straightforward and standard, right? It's the same formatting as any other, as creating an item, right? Or an account, right? We did the example for creating terms, right? It's the same exact formatting, same exact ordeal. You go down to the bottom of your window where it says item, drop this up menu, and you can click new item, okay? Or you can right click anywhere on the screen and you'd be able to click new. Okay? Now, of course, as I mentioned before, you have 10 options to choose from when creating an item. Okay? So in this case, I am going to be creating my service item. Okay? Which is the very first one, service item. Okay? And in this case, what kind of service item am I going to be creating? Well, let's take a look. So we're going to be creating, we'll be creating our service item called photo session, okay? Okay? And of course, you would just fill each and every single one in regard to this. Now, you see this units of measure. We'll talk about that towards the end of chapter 8. Okay? And we'll talk about what does it mean by this item is a part of assembly, right? When you create your inventory assembly, right? If this is part of that assembly, you would click on that and you would extend whatever information you need to have on there. But in this case, we don't. That we're creating a service, so it's not going to be part of assembly, right? Your description, whatever you want to put here. So I usually put 1 hour photo session, okay? And then now I need to create my price point. So my price point here is what I can designate it to sell my product to my customers, right? This is my designated amount that I'm going to be charging my customers, okay? So in this case, I charge $95 an hour to have photo sessions, okay? And is this item taxable or not? In this case, it's not because it's a service, right? Service are typically not taxed, right? Because it's based on a time. So this is where you have to set up your sales tax code. In this case, it is a service item. Okay. And then now I need to put in my account. So in this case, what account am I going to be using to record my services? Straightforward, right? It's under sales, which is going to be under services, right? So because I'm not selling a product, I'm selling a service. So in this case, I have an account called services. All right, once everything looks good, I can click OK. So again, so when I do have these sections where when I create my sales receipt or invoices, I can select these options to say that I sold this service or I sold this product. Okay, so that's the very first one, is creating a service. Straightforward, very easy to use, and again, user friendly, right? All you have to do is just fill in the information that's you are provided and go ahead and just create it. It's that simple. Okay. Now let's go ahead and talk about what we'll create another item here. So in this case, we have other items, right? We have a non-inventory part item. So as I've mentioned before, right? What's the difference between an inventory part and a non-inventory part? In this case, right, when we create our items, right, we have to determine whether the product that we sell is something that we sell often or something that we sell not so often. But we still sell it though. Okay, that's what it means to keep track of how we keep track of the inventory, right? If it's a product that you're constantly selling every single day, then that would most likely be an inventory part. But let's say you sell it every once a month, then you don't necessarily need to keep track of it just because you don't sell that product all the time. That one, you could be safe to assume that that could be a non-inventory part. Okay? Does it make a huge difference whether you categorize it as either or? No, it doesn't really, because at the end of the day, it's still a product you sell. The only difference is, once again, it's just how you keep track of it. Now, for inventory parts, you're constantly going to be able to run inventory stock reports on it, where the non-inventory parts, not so much, right? You could care less because it's an item that you don't really sell very often. So a great example here is I'm going to create a non-inventory part, and then I'll go ahead and create an inventory part. So let's talk about the non-inventory part first. So in this case, I have my drop-down list. I'm going to click non-inventory part. Now, what kind of item is going to be a non-inventory part? In this case, your book tells me that I need to do a custom photo package. Okay. Okay, a custom photo package. Okay. Now, what's going to be in the custom photo package? Straightforward, right? It's a customizable photo package. So that means customers can come and ask for whatever items that they want to do to build their own package. Okay? Now, when you typically have these kind of ordeals where you're not quite sure what the customer's going to want from you, then you can't really put a price point on there. Unless you're assuming that the photo package is going to at least have one photo session and one photo. But in this case, we can't predict what the customer wants. So in this case, I'm going to leave my price point at 0. Is it taxable? We don't know, because we don't know what the customer wants from us. So in this case, I don't know what the customer wants from us. But what account am I going to be using? In this case, it's a sales, because I'm selling a bundle package, or I'm selling a customizable photo package that a customer wants, right? It's an item that I for surely am going to sell. So in this case, I'm going to name this as sales. Okay. And I'm going to click OK. So that's me creating a non-inventory part. Now, in this case, how often is a customer going to come in and actually purchase a custom photo package? Well, in this case, maybe not so much, just because, right, it's tailored to the customer. So in this case, is it something that you sell often? Probably not as much. But I'm going to show you, let's do another example here where we create an inventory item, right, that allows us to create an item in other sense to be able to sell often. So in this case, let's create a new item, right? It's straightforward as far as every single item that I'm plugging in. All I'm doing is just filling in content. So again, if you could do one, you could do all of them. So in this case, let's do another example, but this time let's do an actual inventory part. So when I do an inventory part, now the item has expanded because this is something that you keep track of, that you sell all the time, right? It's gonna also manually keep track of your cost, your what your selling price is, and so on and so forth. Okay, so in this case, that is a huge difference there. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the example here for the inventory part. So in this case, I sell in my store frame five by 7 wood. Okay, I sell wooden picture frames. Okay, and what's my description here? Well, it's straightforward. I sell a 5 by 7 picture frame. Wooden picture frame. Okay, what is my selling price for this one? So as you can see here, your description for your customers to see is the same thing. So in this case, let's break it down. How much does it cost me? Now in this case, this could be relative, right? Because if you're going to be constantly ordering from a vendor, price points can change very often, or very often, right? There could be a shortage in wood. There could be, they're backed ordered. Whatever reason that the price point may change, then you could leave this as 0. But in this case, we already know that it is already set to be purchased at $5.99, or $5. Okay? It's going to be a cost of goods sold, right? And who is our preferred vendor? In this case, we do have a preferred vendor, but if you're buying multiple items from multiple vendors, you don't necessarily have to fill this part out. In this case, I know who it is. It's going to be Ace Supply. Okay. Now, what is my price point that I charge my customers at? In this case, I charge them $9.99. And because it's a product, I for surely charge tax on it. Okay? And what's my account that I'm going to be recording this is, or linking to this transaction with? And it's going to be straightforward. It will be sales. Okay? Because this is my income, right? When I sell my product at $9.99, right, I'm going to collect it as income. Where in this case right here, when I'm looking here on the other side, right, my cost, how much did it cost me, right? And we'll talk about how, when we do inventory, right, you have to figure out what your price point is based on the cost it is for you. So in this case, I'm getting a 99% profit here because I doubled up the price. Okay? And in this case, right, that means for every one picture frame that I purchase, I could sell it for the price of 2. Okay? So that means my profit margin is going to be very high here. All right? So once you fill this part out, now the next part is that now I need to set up my inventory, right? In this case, it's already selected as inventory, so you don't need to do anything there, okay? And then now you have to put in things like what kind of purchasing point do you want to have. So the first one is going to be the minimum. In this case, minimum $20 maximum. It doesn't matter what the maximum is. And then do you have quantity on hand, and do you have a total value? In this case, if you do not ever fill this part in, because if you need to adjust inventory like you're transferring information over, this is where we'll talk about the inventory adjustment or inventory valuation, okay? And you never ever fill this in. All you do is just put in the item in there, and then we'll talk about adjusting inventory in the middle of chapter 8, okay? So that's that there. So once everything looks good, I'm going to go ahead and click OK. So we call this a two-sided item because not only can you use it on a sales form, you can also use it on a purchase order. Okay? And that's what today's chapter is all about, is how do we pick up inventory, how do we purchase inventory, and so on and so forth. Okay? So in this case, I created my inventory part, okay? And again, you can always change it. So you can always modify them at any given time. You just double click on it and you can modify any information. Maybe the price points change. Maybe you need to change it due to the market, right? Maybe it's not worth $10 anymore. You might want to mark it up by a price. So you could also do that as well, okay? So that's creating that one. Now again, we already looked at looking at other charges, so we could create that real quick. So again, if you could create one, you could create the rest. Okay, so again, let's do one more example in your book, which is going to be an other charge. Okay, and I'm going to call this shipping. And of course, description here, right? Straightforward. Shipping and handling. Okay. Is there a price put on it? No, because it's also relative, right? It's going to be based on what item you're shipping out. If you're shipping multiple items, obviously the price is going to go up in price. So in this case, is it taxable? No, right? Shipping is never taxable. Okay, and because it's a service, you're going to do service. Okay. So once that looks good, we say okay. So again, building your items list is going to be by far probably the most easiest task when you are building your company and building the profile on items that you provide or items that you sell, right? And thinking about what are the things that you could possibly have on this list, right, in terms of your sales process. Now, as we mentioned before, right, you could create a sales tax item, right? You could create payments, you could create shipping fees, you could create a lot of things. So making sure that you know this part, because I will test you on this, okay? Saying, what are the, I haven't said, okay, what are the 11 items? What do they do? And how do you know which one to use when you're creating your items? Okay, so once again, this is a means of the sales process. This is also another way to also organize your chart of accounts without cluttering it with all these other extra information, right? Because once again, this is an extension of the sales process. So in this case, all these extra items, right? It instead of flooding your chart of accounts with all the inventory items that you sell or products that you the services that you provide, you're eliminating having to fill the chart of accounts by creating your items list, which we, as you can see, we link them to the accounts that are associated with this particular item. Okay. So again, a lot of these items usually are it means of either it uses whatever item that you or whatever account depending on what the situation is. So for again, services is an income, right? If you sell an inventory part, it's going to be connected to three accounts, right? It's going to connect to an expense account, cost of goods sold. It's going to be connected to your inventory account, and it's also going to be connected to your actual sales when you sell the item. Okay? So in this case, any questions in regards to items?
No.
All right, so let me go ahead and move forward to inventory. Yes.
So, non-inventory, like when we don't sell it
We
often.
yeah, well we don't sell it often, correct.
Okay, and inventory, it's like when we sell it all the time.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Huh? Any other questions? Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to inventory. So, as like I've mentioned before, right? We took at the first look at the first half of the book, which is going to talk about items, okay? So now we're going to be moving on to inventory. Now, when we take a look at we already discussed what the difference between inventory part and non-inventory part is, right? So in this case, when you sell a product, that's the most crucial information that you need to know is how are you going to categorize it? Are you going to keep track of it? So in this case, right, before even going ahead and creating all your items, you need to sit down and think about what are the items and products and services that you sell. Are you going to plan to sell them often? How are you going to categorize it, and so on and so forth. Okay. Okay. And then now we're talking about, well, if I sell my products and items and services, right, how do I obtain those items, right? Am I creating those items, or am I purchasing it from another person so then I can go ahead and resell those things? So in this case, that's the section that we're going to be taking a look at. It's going to be the very top section. So if you remember, when we activated that, yes, we keep track of inventory, this section will appear, okay? Right? This is where they recommend you, if you do choose to use or buy inventory, right? They do recommend you to use a purchase order so that you're able to retrieve the inventory items and then you'd be able to pay the bill later. Okay? And that's fine, right? But again, there's other means that we could do to purchase our inventory items as well, right? We could simply just pay at time of service, so we could simply run a check. Now we'll get to take a look at both situations and scenarios in a few minutes. However, that's what I do want to let you know is when you do say that you are keeping track of inventory, right? The best recommendation is using the flow of transactions, starting with the purchase order, receiving the items, and actually receiving the bill. Okay? So, again, what are the other things that you can do? You can also purchase, once again, your items through the write checks window, right? If you purchase it from there, or if you're purchasing it online using a debit card, you can just put it right into the register. Okay. So in this case here, it asks you to create the inventory part, which we already did, right? We already created my frame 5x7 wooden picture frame. So we are good to go. Now let's talk about what features that you have here to be able to see all those inventory items, right? So in this case, it's only available in Premier and Enterprise and Accountant, right? you do have the capabilities to see your inventory center. So I click my inventory center, and this is what I see. So this is the products and services. This is the products that I sell in my store. Okay, these are strictly only inventory. Has nothing to do with services, because again, services, you can't technically purchase items to create services, right? Services are a means of labor. Okay, it's an individual that takes time out of their day to be able to provide a service. So in this case, this is strictly products only. Now, of course, each one is going to give you like a little rundown of how many you have on hand, right? So in this case, if I take a look at my cases, right, I currently have 24 cases on hand, okay? And it's valued at $73, okay? $79, excuse me, okay? And we just entered in our, oh, that's our price point, excuse me. And it's, you can even see your price points as well. How much are you charging your customers at? Now, of course, what we set our price points is, well, this is what's going to cost me, right? It's going to cost me $5 to purchase. However, I'm going to turn around and sell it for $10 or $9.99, right? In this case, I have 0 in stock, and so on and so forth. So this is actually where you could also create an item as well, but in this case, you're only able to create a inventory part item, okay? So that's where you also have, again, if you go to your vendors at the top of at the top of the menu here, you're able to go to inventory activities, so vendors, right? Inventory activities, and you'd be able to create a new item that way as well, right? And you can also access the inventory center that way as well, okay? So again, inventory center is only available in QuickBooks Premier Enterprise and Accountant, right? If you have Pro, unfortunately, you don't have the access to that. Just because, again, because you're a smaller business, right? You may not need to sell or keep a good track record of all the inventory items that you sell. So in this case, it's kind of, you know, you have lesser features in Pro than you do have for Premier Enterprise and Accountant. Okay? So that's just the inventory center there. All right. Once again, we're going to be focusing on this section right here, doing a purchase order, receiving the items in inventory, and then actually receiving the bill. Okay? So let's start with the first one is going to be talking about how do we actually purchase our inventory. So again, all right, so if you remember, I already created the item, right? Right, I created the item, the inventory part for the 5x7 wooden picture frame. It's already in my items list, okay? Now, I'll go ahead and show you how to apply it to an invoice later on, of course, and how we use it to sell our items and services, okay? But for now, let's focus on making our purchases of inventory, okay? So as I mentioned before, there are 2 ways that you can purchase your inventory, right? You can either go to the actual vendor shop itself and buy it at time of service. So in this case, I could simply either write a check or use a check register to buy my items, okay? So in this case, I'm going to use the write a checks function. Okay? And then I'm going to go ahead and make sure, yes, it's going to come out of my checking account. Okay? And I'm going to go ahead and say to be printed. We'll print it later. Okay? And then now, who's the person that I'm going to be buying from, and what am I going to be buying from them, right? So in this case, Your book says that we are going to purchase from Wang and Son. And what we're going to do is we're going to purchase 5 lenses from them. So in this case, person is going to be Wang and Son. Okay. The date that we are going to be purchasing again could be relative. It just depends on what you want to put in here. But in this case, I purchased it on April 7. One more. April 7. Okay, and how much did it cost you? So once again, is it necessary for you to fill up here? No, you can simply fill it down here. Now, what you notice here is it automatically assumed that we are buying subcontractor services. So this is where you have to pay attention, because in this case, am I paying them for services, or am I buying items from them? So that's where you have to check out here, is that you have 2 tabs. You have your expenses tab, and here you have your items tab. You need to click on your items tab, because in this case, I'm purchasing inventory, or I'm purchasing the products that I sell in my store. So in this case, right, the item I am purchasing is going to be the lens. So there you go, lens. How many lens am I buying? I am buying 5 of them. Okay, so again, memo is going to be purchase 5 lens. Okay. And let's see. Yep, that's it. And it's going to be for the Walnut Creek location. So in this case, I'm buying it for a particular location, Walnut Creek. Okay. Once everything looks good, I'm going to go ahead and click Save and Close. Okay. So now that I purchased that, what happens to those camera lenses? Well, there are a few ways that you can check, right? You can either check it on your inventory center. So in this case, I bought lenses, and it's going to tell me right here that I just purchased 5 of them, and here down below. It will tell me that I just purchased 5 of them right here, the transactions right here. And now my inventory stock has increased. Well, you can either do this, or you can actually run an inventory stock item report, okay? By going up to the report menu, clicking items, clicking inventory, and then I can go ahead and do inventory stock status, okay, by item. So if I click this, it's going to give me a report telling me my rundown of how many items I have available, okay, and so on and so forth. Okay, so yes, you can run reports to make sure that you know how much items you have on hand at all times. Okay, and yes. Okay. So that's the inventory stock status report. So now that was the first one, right? Buying and purchasing at time of service, right? You can do it, and it allows you to increase your inventory accordingly, as long as you use the items tab, right? But in this case, you make sure that you actually have the items in the first place before running that checkout. Now, yes, you can do as you go, right? Create the inventory item as you go. But you just want to be very careful because if it doesn't exist in your items list, you want to make sure that if you are sure that you're going to make a purchase of this and resell it or potentially resell it, that, you know, I would recommend you to create the item in the first place and then use your items on the write a check section to be able to purchase those items. Okay, that's just my recommendation, but again, you could just quick add an item if you don't have it already. Okay, so that's doing that one. That one is using write a checks to be able to buy things at time of purchase. Now, what happens when I decide to order something and have it shipped to my store and so on and so forth? That is where you're going to be using purchase orders. Now, purchase orders in QuickBooks is strictly only used for inventory. Okay? You cannot use a purchase order for anything other except for inventory. Okay? And again, if you decide to buy furniture, you cannot use purchase orders to buy furniture. Okay? In QuickBooks, it's straightforward. It's strictly only used for inventory. Okay? So as you can see here, right here, we got purchase orders right here at the top of my home page right here, right? If you go to your vendors list, you also have the choice to build a purchase order. Okay, so create purchase order, right? So that's menu. If you go to the vendor center, right, at the very top, you're able to create a purchase order that way. You can right click on a vendor and create a purchase order that way. You could even go to manage transactions and create a purchase order, right? And of course, we talked about the bill tracker, right? If you have bills, potential bills, you're also able to create a purchase order this way. Okay, so as I'm already here, I'm gonna go ahead and build my purchase order already here because I'm in my I'm in my bill tracker. I'm already here. I'm gonna go ahead and just click my purchase order that way. So again, that was 6 different ways that you can create a purchase order. Okay. Now, again, what if you decide to order things from a store, but you don't necessarily have to send them a purchase order? In this case, when you are using QuickBooks, it just makes it that much more easier to transfer the information because once you create a purchase order, you can easily transfer the information over without, filling any typos in or so on and so forth, right? So it's essentially the same thing like an estimate, right? An estimate, if it turns into a sale, right? Instead of having to memorize what they ordered from us, we just simply click on the estimate and it fills our form in automatically for us and we can modify it accordingly. Same ordeal here. You don't necessarily need to send out a purchase order slip to a particular vendor to use the purchase orders, but it is definitely 100% much more easily easy to use and much more quicker. You don't have to memorize anything. You just click on the vendor and it will pop up all the information for you automatically. Okay. So purchase orders right here. We're going to purchase from Ace Supply, okay? And it's going to be on, on April 7th. So Ace Supply. Okay, is there a particular class that we purchased this from? Let's see. So Ace Supply. Sorry, I lost track of my spot right here. So we're going to be purchasing Ace Supply. Walnut Creek is where we're going to be doing the class. Walnut Creek, and we're going to do it on April 7th. In this case, purchase order. It's up to you what you want to do. You can do purchase order 2021-1, whatever means that you want to keep track of your purchase orders. Okay? So in this case, the next part I need to fill out is how many items am I going to be purchasing? So in this case, I am going to have the items. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to be purchasing picture frames. So frame. So let's do metal first, and then we'll do wood right after, okay? So in this case, I have that I'm going to be purchasing some metal picture frames. How many? I'm going to purchase 40 of them, okay? Actually, I'm going to do 20 of them. So as you can see, it says right here, it automatically filled in how much it's going to cost me per picture frame. So that it's going to calculate me a grand total of how much it's going to cost me in grand total. Okay, and that was the price point that we set in the actual item when we set it up, right? There was a section where how much does the item cost? Okay, so in this case, my wooden ones cost me $2.15. Okay, and then now I'm going to put in my wooden picture frames. Okay, so there you go. 5x7 wood. Okay, and I'm going to purchase 40 of these. Okay. And of course, right here, my price point, right? I put it in as $5. So then that means it's going to cost me a total of $200. Okay? So then now I'm going to go ahead and you can write a message to your vendor. You can put a memo, right? I would say we purchased 20 metal and 40 wooden frames. Okay. And once everything looks good, I can go ahead and save and close. Okay. So now I have a purchase order submitted already. Now, the next section is going to be determining how we receive the item. So right now, my purchase order doesn't act as anything. It doesn't increase my inventory at all because all I did was simply order for a couple items. That's it, right? I didn't receive the items. I didn't acknowledge that I have items yet because one, I didn't pay for it, and two, I just simply order a quantity. Now, does that mean all the quantities are going to show up? It's possible that they might not. It's possible that the company might be backstocked, right? It could be possible that they could send you a couple now and then they send you a couple later, right? They could send you multiple shipments. And that's the next section that we're going to talk about is going to be how we actually receive our purchase orders. So I already submitted it in there. Purchase orders is once again a non-posting transaction. It doesn't do anything to your company. Okay? It does not affect inventory or anything whatsoever. However, the next section I'm going to be talking about is going to be receiving the items. Once you receive the items, what you're essentially doing is you're transferring the items into inventory. Okay? So let's take a look here. Okay? If I go to receive items, right? I have two options. I have one option to receive with the bill, and then I have the second option to receive without a bill. Now, in this case, right, this is very similar and typical of a lot of businesses, right? Sometimes, if the items are too big or too bulky, what they'll do is they'll, separate shipment orders. Second thing too is, again, if they're overstocked or backstocked, right? They'll send you what they have, and then they'll send you the second shipment later on. So again, this is very typical that you could receive items without a bill, because what do you get instead? You get a packaging slip, okay? So that's going to be more or less the same idea here, is that you could be receiving a packaging slip instead, okay? So let's take a look at our example here, where we are going to be receiving items without a bill. So let's do that one first. So let's experience our first receiving the items without the bill. So again, that's going to be where you get your packaging slips. Now again, you can access this through here, right? Any single way that I've already mentioned to you, right? You'd be able to do it the same way. So if I go to my vendor center, right, and I right click on them, I can either have the option to receive items or receive items without a bill. Okay, and enter bill in this case. Okay, so this is, I could just receive the items and then not enter the bill. So receive items, meaning it doesn't come with a bill, or I can receive items and enter a bill. Okay, so again, it's a little different wording for each scenario, for each area, but in this case, it's pretty straightforward. Okay, you're gonna receive items. Okay, in this case, we have a different terminology here. It's gonna be called an item receipt, or you could just enter in a bill. Okay, so again, there are the 7 ways that you could do that, right? And then the last one, it could be on the purchase order itself. You can receive the items right there. Okay, so again, there's 7 ways for that one. But in this case, I'm just going to go straight to the home page, and I'm going to go ahead and enter receive items without a bill. So again, let's do the second option. So again, like I mentioned before, right, you're going to get what's called an item receipt, right? This is your packaging slip, okay? This is you collecting information, right, from your vendor, right? And sometimes you could even get your full shipment without the bill. And that's fine too, okay? So again, I'm going to go ahead and type in my vendor, a supply. The minute I put in a supply, it's going to flag me down saying, hey, you have an open purchase order that's associated with this vendor. And I click yes, okay? So here, it allows me to select the purchase order that I am currently looking at, right? My purchase order right here, 2022-1, okay? And I'm going to click OK. Now, what you're going to do here is that you're going to fill in all the information that you get from receiving those items, okay? So in this case, you are going to be receiving a packaging slip. So that will be the number that you put in here under the reference number, okay? So in this case, the date is the same, okay? It's going to be the 7th. But this time, now it tells me I have to retrieve or receive all my, I could modify my actual receipts. What if I only received half the shipment? That means I still have part 1 and part 2. So in this case, right, my reference number is going to be some kind of reference number that you want to use. Again, usually it's going to be labeled on the packaging slip, okay? It's not a number that you create on your own, but it is in other sets. If you feel the necessary, if you feel that you want to make a connection to it, go ahead and use like things like purchase order 2021-1A, right? At least you know this is part A of this purchase order that I made. Now again, it says right here, received items, okay? Bill to follow, right? And then you could say part 1 of shipment. Okay? And this time, let's say we only received half our items. So I only received 10 of my metal picture frames and 20 of my wooden picture frames. Okay? So if I only received half of it, that means I'm expecting my next shipment to arrive sometime soon. So once I do that, I'm going to go ahead and click Save and Close. So then now, let's take a look what happened now. If I go to my vendor center and go to a supply, right? What I'm going to notice here is that I have that I have a purchase order, right? And I received an item receipt. Okay? That's because I did not receive a bill, right? I end up getting a packaging slip with half the packages, half the items that were, in the shipment with me. Okay? So that's that one right there. Now, how do I go ahead and receive the rest? Same ordeal, right? You're just going to go ahead and go standard and go straight here. And let's say you do receive your second one, right? Or hit the wrong one. So again, if you do receive your second one, usually it will happen a couple days later, right? So in this case, I'm going to do another item receipt. And I'm going to go to a supply once again. Okay? And of course, it's going to say, you have an open purchase order. Is that correct? And I select this one and I click OK. Now notice this. Because I clicked on that purchase order, it tells me that this second shipment should have 10 metal picture frames and 20 of the wooden. So in this case, QuickBooks is smart enough to keep track of what I received, right? And let's say it's on the 10th. And again, you could use your purchase order 2021-1. This you could say B. So now it's going to tell you this is the remaining of this purchase order. So in this case, I could say ship part 2 of shipment. Okay. And then once everything looks good, I'm going to go ahead and save and close. Okay. So once again, now, right, my purchase order has been complete. I received 2 item receipts. Okay. Now, what's my next step I have to do? This is very crucial because now I received my items, but where's my bill? And that's where you have to follow this through and you have receive items against or enter bill against inventory. And that's where you're going to be converting your item receipts into bills. Okay? So when I click on that window, right, and I go ahead and click a supply, what you're going to notice is it's going to say, well, you have 2 item receipts. You have part A and part B. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Now what's going to happen is it's going to convert the item receipt into a bill. Okay? It's going to convert the item receipt into a bill. And what you're going to notice here is the unfortunate part. You cannot combine more than one item receipt into a bill. Okay, so that's the bad part. But as we all know, right, you can pay multiple bills in one bill, right? You can make payments to multiple bills, right? They don't exclude you there. So that's the concept there is that when you do receive the bill, obviously it's going to bill you for everything, right? You cannot convert you cannot add 2 item receipts into one bill. That's you have to convert them one at a time. So that's the unfortunate part there is that you will not be able to combine it. So right now I received my item, right? I only received 10 of them. So I mean, if in a sense, right? They're billing you as they go, right? I shipped you the first half, so I bill you the first half, right? And then, of course, if they end up not sending the other half, right, they don't have to charge you, right? They could say, oh, I'm so sorry, we're out of stock. would you like a refund, or would you like this, XYZ? So again, they're doing right on their end by sending you two separate bills, because again, they can't just send you one whole entire bill and you only receive half the items. That's not right. So in this case, they're following up on their protocol saying, okay, that's fine. Now again, the bill is gonna have its own unique code, okay? That's you're gonna be able to find on the actual bill itself, okay? So in this case, this is bill number 4441, okay? And it's gonna be on April 10, okay? And so on and so forth. I think that looks good. So I can go ahead and save and close. Okay. You made changes to this? Yes. Okay. So that was my very first one. Now I need to do it for the second one as well, because in this case I have to also convert this my second item receipt. So here you go. I select it. Right, A supply. All right, purchase order, part B. Okay, so then now, again, this is going to be 4442, I think, and then so on and so forth. And we can go ahead and save and close. So let's take a look at what happened to those item receipts. So again, I go to my A supply here, my vendor center. Notice this. They have converted my item receipt into a bill. And that's exactly what you have to do when you do receive items without a bill. Is you first initiate the item receipt. Then once you have all your items and you receive your bill, you go ahead and enter in the bill this way. Okay? Any questions in regards to receiving items without a bill?
No.
Okay. Now, another way that you could have also done that too is if you click on this, right, at the very top here, you have received bill at the top. So when this becomes an item receipt, you could also more or less click that this right here where it says receive bill, and it will convert it automatically from an item receipt into a bill. Okay. So you don't necessarily have to go through enter bills against. You could just simply click on the item receipt and click on received bill. It will do the same thing. Okay. Okay. So let's go ahead and do a second example, because I want to show you what happens when I receive my items with the bill. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and do a quick purchase order real quick. And I'm going to say I buy it from the same supplier. So A supply. Okay. And what I'm going to buy some camera SR32. Okay. And I'm going to say I'm going to probably purchase 2 of them. Okay. So once I purchase 2 of them, okay, I'm going to go ahead and hold on, inventory, purchase orders 2 cameras, SR32, and a supply, again, for April 10, everything looks good, purchase order number 2, all right. Here, because I already put a set price there, it's going to tell me that this is how much it is. So I go ahead and click save and close, okay. So then now, let's go ahead and see what happens if I go ahead and click on receive items with the bill. So what you're going to notice is it automatically creates the bill, right? You don't need to necessarily go through that steps again to create your item receipt and be able to do that. So you're going to get the same window saying you have an open purchase order. And what you're going to notice here is it fills the information in automatically for you. So in this case, right? Straightforward. If you receive items with the bill, boom, it's going to automatically go right into it's going to go straight to a bill. If you receive items without a bill, you're going to get what's called an item receipt. and then once you received all your items, you should be able to convert those item receipts into bills. Okay, so there you go. I purchased it and I can save and close. Okay, so let's go ahead and run that inventory stock status one more time. Okay, so reports, inventory. So then now I have that inventory stock status by item. It's going to tell me now I should have a total of 25 picture frames. Or sorry, in this case, no, that's my minimum. I should have a total right now of 20 metal picture frames, 40 wooden frames. Okay, I have 2 SR cameras. Okay, and I have 5 cases. So again, as you can see, or not cases, you have 5 lenses. So as you can see, my inventory stock status is accordingly. Okay, right? So that is purchasing my inventory. Any questions in regards to this?
No.
Okay. All right. So again, how do I use my items to sell? We've already seen an example, right? If you create an invoice, right? Let's say this is for Jerry Perez. So again, Jerry Perez. He's from Walnut Creek. Okay, let's say he decided to purchase something from you on April 8th, okay, because we just made the purchase of the items. How do I use items? Well, here's my item code. If I drop down my menu, I get to select what kind of items that Jerry Perez bought for me. So in this case, maybe he bought metal picture frames, and he bought 2 of them, right? And right here, my price point is $5.99, right? Where it cost me $2.50 to buy, but I'm charging him $5.99. And once again, we're using the item Contra Costa as my sales tax item, okay? And there it is, right? Any questions in regards to this?
No.
Okay.
No.
And okay. Now, third thing too is you can also enter in any extra charges that you have for inventory. Okay, so for any reason that you have extra charges, you can go ahead and put in the extra charge is going to be okay. For example, right? If you got charged shipping and it's separate, yes, you could tack it on into the bill. So let's take a look at that camera real quick, okay? So that camera bill that we were looking at, this one right here, right? This one includes my items right here saying, well, you bought some cameras. Okay? Now, what I could do here is I could say, well, I also got charged shipping. Okay? And this could be part of a cost of goods sold or so on and so forth, right? Or your shipping fee. So in this case, I could have freight expense. I could have delivery services. So delivery and postage. Postage and delivery. And I could say I got charged $10 for the delivery. Okay? Or $100, excuse me. That's going to change this amount right here to, right? Because it was $8.90, right? So that means you could change this to, what is it, 1,000. So that means there you go. You have $100 of freight that you could charge, right? And if you want to, you could put this into the inventory item. It's not wrong. But if you are planning to pay shipping separately, you can tack on more items here. So here's the items that you purchased, but this is the shipping that you were charged. And you can change it on here accordingly. So again, and you could even charge your customers as well for shipping. But in this case, right, yes, you could tack on other expenses such as shipping and handling and things like that. Okay? And I'm going to save and close. Okay? So that is that right there. Okay? Now, what happens if you have overcharges? That is something that I'm going to have you guys read. Okay? And any questions? Any questions from here on out? I'm going to...
None.
Okay. So, let's stop here. Okay? And we're going to go on our break.